Thank you for joining us today. My name is Shelley Harrison, and I'm your host, and you're watching the Veterans Radio Network. And I want to just ask if you could subscribe and, follow us on, we have multiple platforms that we're on, and we want you to subscribe so you can have all of the wonderful shows that we bring. Today, we have two guests, and I'm very excited because they have very different backgrounds and the work that they're doing, and you'll just love both of them. I'm your host, and we want to just say that we interview just people that are doing heroic things in their communities. And today, like I mentioned, my two guests, they're doing some amazing work. We want to thank our audience for sure. So make sure that you put your questions in the chat box and, follow us throughout the interview. And if you have questions, we will answer them live. So please make sure that you do that. We want to thank our backstage team, and we have several people that are helping and supporting. We have our executive director, Joseph Molina. So I'd like to give him a shout out. He does great work and develops wonderful programs for veterans and for those who support veterans. And then we also have Jimmy Odong, who is our magician behind the scenes. He handles all of the backstage, the guests and everything that's going on with the radio show. And then I have my co-host, who is Dolly Rivera, and she does a wonderful job co-hosting and also has the opportunity to interview some extraordinary people. And then, of course, our Laura Torres, who is our fearless administrator, and she does really a lot of different things behind the scenes. So we want to give Laura a shout out too. Thank you to the team. And, again, without our team, we couldn't bring you this show. So again, wherever you're listening from, please, ask questions as we go through the interviews and subscribe. Just make sure you subscribe because we want to make sure that, we bring you content that you can absolutely use. Our sponsor this month, we want to thank Cardinal Capital. We had them last month as one of our sponsors, and we want to thank them again for their continued sponsorship. And again, I believe that we have the information for Cardinal Capital, and you saw it at the beginning of the show, and we'll bring it back during the middle of the show. Today, my first guest is Tim Chambers. And before we bring him on, I want to say a little bit about him. Tim Chambers, the saluting Marine and founder of TSM Cares. He is a veteran, an author, motivational speaker, high school mascot, and AMVETS spokesperson. And again, he was in the military in the U.S. Marines for nearly 16 years. So we will definitely acknowledge that when he comes on the show. He grew up with he was the oldest of 6 kids and worked with his grandpa on his Christmas tree and strawberry farm. How exciting is that to be able to have that opportunity and all those beautiful, great smelling trees. He joined the Marine Corps, and one day they volunteered, in this case, Tim, to support Special Olympics. And from that day on, volunteering has been his life's work. So I would like to bring on Tim, my first guest. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Good.
Good. We definitely want to thank you and just salute you for all of your extraordinary work, working with, number one, being in the military for nearly 16 years, and then continuing to do that and do some great work that we're going to get into and talk about. Before we start, what I'd love for you to do is just kind of tell our audience, what drives you to do the work that you do?
Well, I grew up the oldest of 6, and I had to help my mom a lot. She had 6 kids in 5 years, so there wasn't much of a time span between all of us 6 kids. And I just fell in naturally. Like at age 7, I was cooking and cleaning and babysitting.
Oh my gosh.
And carrying the babies to school. We'd always be late. they'd say, "Why are you late this time?" We were in Texas at the moment. And I said, a burglar broke in. Lady goes, "Are you okay?" Like I said, "Our alarm clock." She goes, "What got stolen?" I said, "Our alarm clock." So of course
Oh,
she sent us in hysterics to the classroom. But yeah, so it really
oh,
started at early age for me. I'm taking care of them, working on the farm and seeing the fruits of our hard labor when we grow the Christmas trees and the strawberries,
mm,
and helping people
oh,
and being at the ground level as dirty as everyone else in the field. Like there was no above anyone. That's why I don't think podiums are necessary. They're only maybe necessary for people to see above the crowd or something of that nature. But I like to be on the
yeah.
same level as everyone else.
Oh, very nice. And with the organization that you have, and I watched videos and I saw you in action. And the one thing that really got me was there were a lot of different motorcycles, and you salute them as they start their journey. And let's talk about that a little bit. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that was way before an organization even existed. You don't need an organization to make a difference. You just have to have some
Yeah.
initiative and heart, and that's what it was on that day. I was a partner with the Korean War Commemoration Committee, educating people about the Korean War, giving long overdue appreciation to our Korean War veterans, jumping out of the bushes by the Korean War
Mhm.
Monument for 3 days, educating people and saying, in June of 1950, North Korean forces crossed the 38th parallel. So the
Mm,
next day, I got prompted to come out in my uniform and greet people and give hugs and handshakes because there was a lot of pain in those eyes
yeah.
that I
Oh,
walked
yeah.
behind me in the stand, when I had my little booth. So then I see the bike zooming by, and I'm like, how am I going to be able to reach all of them? Because the only time I thank them is at funerals. And I thought that was too
Yeah.
late, considering what our country didn't do for them. So I jumped off the curb, popped up that salute, and little did I know that it was going to make such a mark in their eyes, and the Patriots' eyes, and families' eyes, and people that just have illnesses they have to deal with, or they need to see some. They took it as inspiration, which was very humbling for me. And I've been
I
there every year
bet.
since 2002.
Wow. And share a little bit about, when you started the saluting Marine, how did that evolve and start?
Well, I was just out greeting people, and I jumped off the curb, popped up the salute. Now, the saluting Marine really didn't come to life until like 3 to 4 years later because no
Mhm.
one knew my name. And in the Marine Corps Times, it was unidentified Marine salute spikers at
Oh,
Rolling Thunder event. And I like that. I like to be incognito. I like just to
mysterious.
show up. There was a lot of
But they need to
embracing
know who
me,
you are.
and then I bounce. But
Yeah.
then over the years, they started to get to know my name. And then the
Mm.
videos started to catch up with me. And the Marine Corps, they showed them where to go because they thought maybe it was a PR person from the Marine Corps, but the Marine Corps even
Oh,
had to look for me. You know what I mean? Because no one really knew what I was doing because I was a Marine on liberty that thought we had too much liberty in DC. So I wanted
yeah.
to go out to those monuments and learn about our history that's going to the graves that's not in any of the history books. And then
Yeah.
someone made a video, and then they labeled it the Soldiers Vigil, and everyone got upset about it. And then he changed it to Marines Vigil. And then just
Mm.
from there, it kind of like grew on its own accord as the
Yeah.
saluting Marine.
Gosh, that's fascinating, and you've really taken it to levels that I'm sure you didn't really think that this would come to where you are right now. And talk about today, the saluting Marine, and what your organization is doing for our veterans.
Well, once again, it's more of just what Tim is doing. I created the charity to be able to work with companies to find more money. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it and say resources to be able to do more because I see a lot of needs out there. But I
Yeah.
just haven't made it happen because I'm surviving on my own end, and I'm supporting charities all over the country as Tim, reinforcing what they're doing, helping them raise millions of dollars in their communities, helping people in their community. And
Yeah.
so I've helped some veterans with
Mm.
unaffordable dental. And still, it's on my own accord because it's coming out of my own pocket 90% of the time. When people call me,
Mm.
I find a way to be there for them. And I've got story
Yeah.
after story after story
Oh, I
of me
bet you
supporting
do.
their beach on their home front, being there for them, letting
Yeah.
them know things that they were never told. I bounced one gentleman out of the bar as the alcoholic the whole town
Oh,
knew just by saying, "Thank you. The bomb you dropped in Vietnam saved my father's life. And that's why I'm
oh,
here today." And he was never
yeah.
told that in his whole life.
My
And it changed his
gosh.
whole life. The manager of the restaurant, the Texas Roadhouse, said, "Chambers, I don't
Oh,
know what you said to him, but he's changed 180 degrees."
it impacted him. Yeah, and, and I wanna say Texas Roadhouse does a wonderful job because I think it's every, Veterans Day every year that they give free food to the veterans and family.
And they support a lot of nonprofits. They do a lot of
They
events
do.
like
Yeah.
that. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, what a great story, though. And, you know, I know you have lots of stories. Can you share another one with us that just had a profound impact on you that to this day, you just, I mean, you have to pinch your skin because you're like, I can't believe this story happened.
Well, aside of me getting a World War II veteran to stand with me 3 years ago, Dr.
Mm,
Heilman, which was a chancellor at the University of Richmond, and then he
yeah.
passed away a few months later. And I got him in
Mm,
his dress blues and had him stand with me. He spoke at my
mm,
funeral a few days prior. But let me just tell you, I get a phone call, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Tim, are
mhm.
you coming through on your way to DC for Rolling Thunder? I'm like, I'm not sure. Because sometimes I go with Run for the Wall across country, but I can't take all that leave all the time because the Marine Corps wasn't giving me any TAD. So I was taking
Oh,
leave all the time, doing whatever I got to do. And
yeah.
so I got a friend and you're on his bucket list and he's going to die. He's got cancer.
Oh,
He can't ride his bike
oh my
anymore. So
gosh.
can you send me a picture and sign it for him? I'm like,
Mm,
absolutely. But then I get off the phone. I talk to Lorraine. Lorraine, I can't just send a photo. Let's do something more.
yeah.
Let's go there. So we drove 700 miles. I surprised him at his birthday party with a
God.
salute. I gave a eulogy to the family, the friends, his
Mm,
parents, to him, to his wife, to his children about not having regrets. I bounced
mm.
from there. He lived 2 years longer. I get a phone call
Oh,
right before Rolling Thunder. Tim, I want you to hear this from me before it gets out in the Facebook. He's about to die. His name was
mm,
Hoss. This is his wife, Deb
oh,
Robinson, calling me. She goes, Tim, what you said
wow.
that day made him live longer to the point that people didn't think he was sick. And he did
Gosh.
things I never knew he wanted to do.
Wow, that is an extraordinary story.
So
I
then
mean, and
I
the
don't
heart that you
surprise her.
have.
I surprise her in Fort Worth, Texas at the funeral. I come out of the bushes. I'm just in a suit. I put my hand on her shoulder. I'm like, Mrs. Robinson. She
Oh,
goes, my hand. I'm like, Mrs.
yeah.
Robinson. She looks up. She loses it because I wanted to
Mm,
show her that I was there for her, the strength behind her at
right,
that
from the
moment.
beginning to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow, that
it
that
makes me
is
special. Whatever I go, whatever I do, you don't need a charity to make this happen. A charity is more of a hindrance than anything because I don't even know how to raise money. I try to sell T-shirts, it never works.
oh,
But when I see a call in, I just make it happen. If I have to lift more, if I have to work harder here at home, if I have to tap
yeah.
dance to my wife, fortunately,
Mm.
she's a very supportive animal. She's a Doris Day fan. She's kind of old school. She
Oh,
respects her elders. That's how it should
yeah.
be, So I'm very lucky.
Mm. Well, it's she sounds wonderful. And why don't you shout out her name?
Her name is, I'm just kidding, Lorraine.
Lorraine.
And she's the one that had the
There's
cats. But my lawyer said it's a community property state, so I'm on the hook for half of them now because we commingled
oh.
funds. But anyways,
Yeah. Well, you definitely are doing extraordinary work, Tim, and we want to thank you for that. And how can our chamber help you?
I just need to know veterans that you partnered with and their businesses. So when I go to states and I give speeches on stages and people say thank you for service, I can tell them to return my salute by putting these veterans in your community to work.
Mm,
Don't
yeah.
just thank them. Just don't pat them on the back. Show some faith and show some trust in them. And that's more dignity than anything than putting them to work because that'll keep the medication to the wayside because they'll have to
Yeah.
hold themselves accountable to themselves. So that's what I want.
Oh, and that is beautiful. So really do more and don't just, salutes are wonderful, but I think, like you said, really giving resources and tools and guidance and, support in ways that are beyond a thank you or, whatever it is that we're doing. And I know that our veterans, they deserve it. They've sacrificed so much. But we definitely want to thank you for the work that you're doing and the way that you're helping and supporting our veterans and showing up in places, on your own dime or, on donated money. But we definitely appreciate your work, Tim. And at this point, is there anything else that you want to say before we go to a break that you want to let our audience know?
Is like an end note break, like your next guest break, or just a break?
We're actually going to go to the next guest.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Well, hey, 9/11 is coming up. And
Yeah.
I just want everyone to think about how we can avoid ever having a 9/11 ever happen again.
Yeah.
And that's by investing in the future in our youth. And if you know any struggled children, they're not going to graduate high school, There's challenge academies the Army National Guard produced starting in the 90s, helps them get catch-up credits to graduate high school, or helps them get their GEDs so they can march forward. And it holds them, it follows them for a year after that. And that's what I'm a team leader of in the state of Pennsylvania under the Keystone Challenge Academy. And I advise you to look out for the future, because they're the ones that are going to save our behinds down the road.
Gosh. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Tim. And we'll make sure that it's in the show notes, because I think that's something that a lot of people can rally and help and get behind. So again, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your service and the work that you're doing more than you know. And we want you to continue to be successful. So thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Yes. Thank you, Tim. And we're going to go to our next guest. But first, we want to mention we have our sponsors from last month, and they're continuing this month, which is Cardinal Capital. All right, and welcome back. Again, my name is Shelly Harrison. I'm your host, and we just finished interviewing with Tim Chambers, the saluting Marine who is doing extraordinary work. So we want to make sure that you follow him. He has a Facebook group that has over 47,000 people in it, and he gives tremendous support. So anyway, thank you, Tim, for being our guest. And now I want to go to our next guest, who I really enjoy. Our next guest. I saw him speak last week, and I'm very proud to have him as a client too. I want to bring on our next guest, who is Dr. Fred Moss. And Dr. Fred Moss is a graduate of Northwestern University Medical School and a licensed psychiatrist who has served the mental health industry for nearly 4 decades. During that time, he has consulted patients, practitioners, medical facilities, nonprofit organizations, and community groups. While his initial interest in psychiatry was to expand on communication and human connections as primary healing tools, a shift in the medical paradigm in the 80s led to physicians diagnosing patients with biological and chemical imbalances and prescribing medications as a primary way of dealing with life's distress. The medications, which on occasion seemed to briefly quell the stated concerns, appear to be exasperating, even causing the symptoms they were prescribed to treat. And he is on a mission to healing the world through authentic conversations. And I want to bring on Dr. Fred Moss and have you meet him. So Dr. Fred, there you are.
Thank you.
Yes, and welcome to the Veterans Radio Show. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's a deep and honest, real honor to be on the National Veterans Radio Show, and I take that seriously. And at the same time, we have work to do, and we have work to do that we can do with pleasure, and we can do it with fun. We can do it with grace and ease. We can communicate effectively, and just like Tim was just saying, we should look to the group coming in right behind us, the 18 to 39-year-old group, because that's really the group that's going to be saving our butt around the corner. And maybe we're not listening to them as much as we need to.
Yeah. And I have 2 kids in that category. So, I know the work that needs to be done. My kids are great, but there's always work to be done, for all of our kids.
Yeah.
I just want to give you a shout out, because I heard you for the first time speak last week, and it was in Irvine. We were at an event with CEOs and executives, and it was extraordinary what happened in that room. I mean, there were so many people that were so intrigued by your talk, by the way that you presented the material. And when we look back and we think it was all about authenticity and using your true voice. So let's start with that, because we talked about your past, but I want to start from 2006. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, in 2006, that really was a turning point. I do call that my true voice moment. It was 2006 when I really had my about face, if you will. I had an opportunity to really look at, did I want to continue being a psychiatrist, or maybe even find a new profession? I was disgusted with the profession and how it had become a biological based profession where talking wasn't even part of the conventional approach to handling patients. Like when
Yeah.
talking didn't work, they would send people to a psychiatrist. So I
Mm.
decided that the medicines and the diagnoses might be actually causing more harm than good in many cases. And I started taking my low risk patients off of medicine in 2006. I know that sounds really radical, and it was
Yeah, it
really
is. Yeah.
radical.
But
Yeah,
for a good reason. For a good
it's
reason.
yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
We don't think that it's radical when we start somebody on toxic chemicals built in a laboratory, but we think it's really radical when we stop it. It's fascinating. And what I learned, Shelley, which was so remarkable, was that nearly all the clients that I took off their medicine and then took off their diagnosis got better, and often way better, and their diagnoses disappeared. So I started doing it with a wider group of people, and people said, well, what are you going to replace that with? And what I replaced it with was what we already knew. I knew this from when being little Freddie in my playpen, and that was that communication and conversation and creativity
Yeah.
and primarily human connection is where people heal from. People really just want to be heard, Shelley. People want to be
They
loved for who they
do.
are.
Yeah.
That's what we all want. That's what podcasts are about. That's what we're doing now. It's why we speak. We want to be heard for our own personal values. We want to be heard for what matters to us. And when I started doing that, I really got to experience firsthand, and have experienced firsthand since 2006, the whole idea that speaking to someone, listening to someone, communicating and connecting with someone, creating that harmonic resonance with another person is exactly where healing takes place. And you don't have to sit on a couch for 4 times a week. You don't have to go to Tibet. You don't have to join an ashram, and you don't have to even see a guru. What you need to do more than anything else is be able to be heard for who you are. And the way to do that is to listen to other people. When you listen to other people, you get the capacity, you create the space to being heard for who you really are. And that's what I'm all about now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and again, I think, looking at the work that you're doing, you're really creating a movement, because I think there are so many people that are on medication, and even though that's part of your past, and, you have, accreditations and everything that you've accomplished up to this point, you found a way to flip the conversation, and really get people to understand, to enjoy life. And there are some modalities that you mentioned, and I want to say there's 8 of them. So can you mention those 8 modalities? And one of them includes painting.
Yes. So the first book I wrote, and this was on the back end when people started really seeing that what I was doing was helping, they were like, what are you going to do with people? What should they do with their time if they're not going to be taking medicines and, sitting in their room all day long? I was like, well, that's a good question. Why don't we do some things that actually assist with these so-called symptoms? And I had noticed in my days, and I think most of our listeners and you have noticed as well, that when we do creative arts, the symptoms or the negative vibration experiences tend to disappear. So the 8 that you're speaking of come from my book, The Creative 8, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression, which you can find on my website or at Amazon. So it's welcometohumanity.net/creative or /creative8 for the audio version. And we look at art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, and gardening. And those were the first 8, but there were 2 more added, and those were photography and cleaning. And then ultimately, cleaning, like not just
clean. I love to clean.
Right. No, sometimes cleaning as a creative act, like like changing the room, reconfiguring your room or redesigning something can be very, very therapeutic. And when you're cleaning, you actually are creating.
That's so true.
When you're creating, during the process of creating, you are not stuck in those negative vibration experiences. And your symptoms basically lift. And the truth is, it isn't like they come back. It's like you let them back. And the opportunity while you're creating, doing what you came here to do, be creative, is a really great place to lose some of those negative experiences. Now, ultimately, Shelley, there's the last one. And the last one is being of service. And I know that our veterans know this more than anyone. Being of service is so critical. Now, the veterans, they're called service. They're called service providers. They went to service. But the truth is, being of service takes something. And what it takes is helping anybody do anything with or without a reason. When we do that, like Tim was talking about, his massive capacity to deliver service, when we provide service, then our hearts open up. And when our hearts open up, it's so impossible to feel all the negative experiences, like the what about me experiences, tend to go away. So when nothing else works, be of service. Listen carefully to who's there and help anybody do anything.
Yeah. And again, I just love the work that you do. And I know that you have, because we do have you on the Professionals in Action segment. I would love for you to talk about right now how there's something that you're doing for really virtually anyone. And it's a program that you've developed and put a lot of time into, a lot of, research, and now it's ready to launch.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think people need to know what this program is all about.
Thank you so much. So the True Voice course is what you're talking about. And it really has been a labor of love. It's the opus of my life. It's the best thing I've ever created. It really came through me. And it's a course, it's a 12-week course. It has 6 modules, and each module has 3 lessons. So 18 lessons and 20-something videos and a 60-page workbook. And you get a mastermind where you get me a couple times a month for 90 minutes a month. And you also get copies of both of my books, the one I just named, Creative 8, and the other one, which I wrote this year, called Find Your True Voice. Shocking name, I know.
Hand in hand.
And you really we really look at ways to dig down deep into those areas of life where we've been hiding ourselves, or in some cases, acting like someone we're not in order to protect the person that we are.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about that, Shelley, when you act like someone that you're not in order to protect the person that you are, it's kind of preposterous. It's kind of absurd.
Yes.
It's kind of like ludicrous, really, to think that would be effective. And it isn't effective. And it's a tremendous amount of work for a very low yield. So what we got one life here. And if you can't actually speak your true voice, no one will ever know you. And that would be the greatest tragedy. Henry David Thoreau, I think I quoted this last week, but the massive men live lives of quiet desperation and then go to their graves with their songs still in them. How sad is that?
That's so sad. It really is. And there are a lot of stories and voices that, that are in multiple, where they're in cemeteries that, that were never heard.
Exactly. Yeah. And, when you go to your grave with your song still in you, you have not lived your full life. So what the True Voice course does, and frankly, Shelley, and I know that you led me to this, but it's really important. The True Voice course is aimed at the 18 to 39-year-old, generally male population. That is my target population for this course. I have made that very clear in the beginning, and there may be a lot of people who are either in that group or know people in that group who are listening to this show.
Yes.
The 18 to 39-year-olds, as Tim referenced, as we all know, are the ones who are pulling up the rear right now and have seen this whole thing happen. They have watched the whole thing. They're as confused and generated as any of us. And frankly, they're the most brilliant group of human beings I've ever met. And we need their voice to be delivered. This course is meant to deal with primarily, like you said, anyone. But the truth is, we are a special focus on the 18 to 39-year-old group, men and women, who are out there being stifled and muffled and muzzled, like I said, self-expression deficiency disorder or zip lip syndrome. Those are 2 disorders that I've made up. And the time is now to activate these very important people for our future, because without their help, it really looks pretty bleak. We need their help. We need their assistance.
We absolutely do. And how do people find the program?
The program can be found at truevoicepodcasting.com. You don't want to let podcasting fool you, but if you want to become a podcaster, I have a great team that will show you how to go from zero to podcaster. It's a great place, like we're doing right here today. It's a great place to really voice yourself and have hundreds or thousands or millions of people hear you. So we do use podcasting as a possibility. So it's truevoicepodcasting.com. We'll land you.
Yeah, we have that up on the screen here. So we definitely want to make sure people know that it's available. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then my book is actually available for all your listeners too. I'm very eager to send a free copy of this book out to anyone who's listening. And they can find that at findyourtruevoicebook.com. That's findyourtruevoicebook.com.
And we have that on the screen as well. Absolutely.
finally, if neither of those things, or if you've got general ideas, you want to work with me or work through me or work around me or give me somewhere else to speak so we can do what we did last week and do what we do here, the time is now, Shelley. Today's the day.
Yeah.
You are the one. They are the one.
Mm.
I'm ready to
That's-
deliver this to all groups. And the way to do that is to find me at Dr. Fred at welcometohumanity.net. Dr. Fred at welcometohumanity.net.
I just love your energy, Dr. Fred.
Thank you.
I'm not kidding you. It's contagious. And I have to tell you that I've done probably about 3 random acts of kindness, but I'm not going to talk about them because if you talk about them, then they're not random.
Exactly.
And then I also did something that I had reached out to a banker that, and his name is Leroy. I don't know if he's watching, but I reached out to him after 40 years of when we worked together back in the banking industry. So I did that because of you and what you talked about last week. So thank you for giving me that motivation and that insight. And we want to thank you for being on the show today as a professional in action. And we absolutely want to continue the conversation. And thank you, Dr. Fred, for the work that you do, because you're doing extraordinary work and we appreciate it. And we would love to collaborate with you, through the Veterans Chamber of Commerce. So with that, we're coming to the end of the show. And one last thing very quickly that you want to mention, Dr. Fred, to our audience, and then we're gonna end the show.
Okay. Well, the one thing I want to mention to your audience is you are probably okay just the way you are. You are probably wondering whether there's something wrong with you. And the answer to that is probably not. As it turns out, this is a crazy world. And if you're feeling crazy in a crazy world, that's what's expected. They want you to pretend not to feel crazy in a crazy world and are going to blame you like they blame a log for burning in a fire. But the truth is, you are you, and you are an exquisite human being just as you are. And frankly, you just need to be heard. And by being heard, you need to speak your true voice. And that's all I'm about these days, is helping people speak your true voice and listening to others do the same. You can join the True Voice Tribe as well, an exclusive Facebook group that comes with my course. And this is a place where you can be with like-minded individuals. But ultimately, what I really want you to get is that even if you're sure there's something wrong with you, there probably isn't. And it's worth stepping into how beautiful and how remarkable your life really is. Not always pleasant. No. But always extraordinary.
Wow. And those are such words of encouragement. And we appreciate that, because I'm sure that there are plenty of people out there that heard your message and just really resonate with that. So thank you again, Dr. Fred. And we also want to thank Tim Chambers, who was on the show earlier. And of course, we want to thank our sponsor, who is Cardinal Capital, and our team behind the scenes with the Veterans Network, Jimmy, Joe, Dolly, and Laura. We want to thank you. And without our audience, meaning you, we wouldn't be able to do this. So thank you so much for being here today. Go out and have a wonderful weekend. It's a 3-day weekend. And we want to thank you for joining us today. Subscribe to the National Veterans Radio Show on YouTube and follow us. We have these shows every Friday. So with that, I want to say thank you and goodbye.